Whenever I interview someone for a position, one of the questions I inevitably ask them is, we live in an ever-changing world, and certainly our business is always progressing forward. So how do you stay on top of, all the changes that are happening, and so you can take advantage? The reason I'm looking for this is because I want to know that they are able to adapt and grow, right? Just as a quick anecdote, I work primarily in the podcast industry. And when I went to college, that wasn't an industry whatsoever, right? So there's nothing in theory that could have prepared me for the podcast industry, even though now in colleges, that could be a major, right? But the filmmaking stuff that I did learn is applicable. And so with the question that I'm asking, I'm looking for them to be able to showcase that learning is a lifelong pursuit for them, and that they're able to be adaptable within the growing demands of, our industry. And also selfishly, I want to know, what are the ways that people keep up to date with what's happening, right? And how are they applying it in their own lives? So that way, if it makes sense, I can apply it for myself. And the reason that I'm talking about this now is because, I want to pose it to you and have you think about that for yourself. What are the ways that you are keeping up with everything going on? For me, I watch YouTube tutorials, like Cinecom is great, Film Riot. I listen to many podcasts like the Slash Film podcast. I listen to Team Deacons, which is a wonderful, wonderful filmmaking podcast. And things of that nature. Also, reading various trade publications, so like Deadline, Hollywood Reporter, being on Twitter, other social media sites, TikTok's been wonderful for that as far as discovery and so forth. And so it just permeates my mind with, all these new ideas of things that are happening that I might be able to take advantage of. I also watch behind the scenes featurettes, of movies. Certainly things like Avatar 2, The Way of Water. Their behind the scenes making of is just tremendous, and I learned so much about how they made that movie. And even if I'm not at that scale yet, it's just wonderful to take in and be aware of, right? And maybe, okay, I can't do it this way, but how do I create that same idea, but on a much smaller scale, right? So I think it's important to think about it in those terms, because as I said, the world and our business is constantly evolving. Certainly right now, we're at a huge inflection point with artificial intelligence. And when it comes to AI, one of the big things is I think we all need to be involved in that conversation. Otherwise, if we don't, then the people we don't want deciding how AI should be used will decide how AI is going to be used. So for all those reasons, I think it's important to, as much as possible, be up to date on the various things, at least from a just be aware perspective, right? And it doesn't mean that you have to go chase a trend right away and be like, oh, okay, this new thing, I gotta go for example, I really believe in NFTs, albeit, they've gotten a negative connotation because people have taken advantage of them and just used it as a cash grab. But I actually think it's a really useful way for creators and audiences to actually connect, and that's how I want to use them. Now, I've been learning about NFTs and kind of keeping up to date in a small way. I'm no expert and stuff like that, but I also know right now, in terms of where I'm at with my stuff, right now that's not the main focus, that's not the main priority. First, I have to do other things before I can even think about the NFT component of that project, right? So it's also being able to compartmentalize all this new information in a way that's not overwhelming and you're not just pursuing something for the fear of FOMO, but it is useful to you. You know, for example, I also see a lot of podcast advancements and a lot of podcast AI tools. And as I said, you know, podcasting is one of my main jobs that I work on, you know, overall, and that brings in, you know, that makes the bulk of what I do in terms of finances. And so, you know, I'm kind of very aware, right? I got my antennas up for what's happening within the industry, which, by the way, a great podcast is a New Media Show. It's a whole history of essentially podcasting and kind of what's going on. And it can be a little bit dry, but the information there is really phenomenal. But anyway, I digress. The point being that there's stuff constantly happening within the podcast space. And as shiny as an object may seem, you know, a lot of times I'll test it out and it might be nice in theory, but it's still not doing it, or not to the level that I need it at. And so I'm okay with not pursuing something just for the sake of pursuing it. If it can really make my life beneficial, speed up my process, then yes, 100%. But otherwise, it's like, you know what, noted, tracking it. If it does get to a point that it's better, then I'll start to be more interested in it. But for right now, it's just cool to know and let them keep going type of thing, right? So I think that's important to also know as well, that you don't have to just be like, oh, you know, head on a swivel of like, oh, this is cool, because you'll get lost within the sea of all the BS that is out there, you know, because there is a lot of BS, and you know, you have to kind of filter through it to get to the good stuff. So yeah, that's my advice to you. As always, I encourage you to comment down below with any thoughts, questions, or hit me up on social media at Svitek. Would love to keep this conversation about this topic going, especially, you know, how you're keeping up to date with, you know, this ever-changing world. So thank you so much. I truly do appreciate you, and I'll see you next time.